big question is, now that I've owned the car for 6 months, it's legitimately been 6 months, what do I think about it? And I have to answer with, there's some goods and bads. There's a lot of goods that come with it. Look, I got into this car because I was interested in basically changing the paradigm a little bit. You know, we're shifting what we're doing. I could make my mark. I could do my one little thing that could help the environment and move the needle a little bit about changing the way we think about cars and the way we think about electricity and gasoline and so forth. So I could do that part. The other part is, you know, you're driving the spaceship. You're driving something that's really cool and futuristic and much more interesting than a traditional car. There's a lot more gadgetry in here and things like that that are really cool. So as I look over how I've done and what I've used it for and how I've used it, it's pretty good. I actually am very happy with the car overall. You know, there's a couple little things about it that I'll get to in just a minute, but overall I'm really happy with it. I like the fact that I can navigate to anywhere. It's got, you know, more electronics and gadgets on it than I could ever have imagined being in a car. Even though every car is coming up with more and more gadgets and more fun things, this one really is kind of unique in its own way, the way it does things. And I'm contributing to an overall greater good in a way, where I'm helping build the future because a lot of the data that it collects from me is being used in other places. So to help build the autopilot and the navigation and things like that. Now, as I think about it, the one thing that maybe that I'm missing that I might like to have is the autopilot. As I think about the car itself, driving itself more or less, or being able to adapt to things, that would be the one thing at this point that I think, wow, that would be cool to have. Now, I'm not ready to spend the $3,000 on it to have it, but I keep thinking about it as I'm driving along. It might be really cool to have that feature. Now, one other thing that maybe I kind of miss in the car is the satellite maps. That was a cool feature that they added for a month or so, and I really liked having it, and I do miss it now that it's gone. That's one of those things that I actually do miss and would like to have if I could have the opportunity to have it, but I can't justify spending the $10 a month to have that. I've been playing around with having the phone be the Wi-Fi hotspot, and it's been great. I figured out that approximately, using Hulu or Netflix or whatever, there's approximately 4 hours of video that you can watch that would take up about 1 gig. So to give you perspective on that, that's sort of how it would work. So, you know, it's hard to get to the 4 hours of watch time for 1 gig. Most months on my cell plan, I use about 1.5 gigs or so of cell coverage, cell service. So, you know, to get to, you know, half a gig is about 2 hours of watch time. And I really don't watch that much TV in the car. It's like 20 minutes at a time, something like that, a couple times a month. It's not like I'm watching it all the time. Karaoke takes much less. The streaming music takes much less. It's the video that's the highest consumer. So if I kind of look at it that way, I probably won't go over very many months on my cellular plan with the 2 gig limit that they put on it. But I might, and if I do, it's not a big deal. Like I said, I do it some months anyway. I go over every once in a while anyway. So a few more months a year for the extra $10, probably just worth it. You know, just that sort of thing, rather than a consistent $10 a month. And I know it's trivial, and connecting it is a little bit of a pain in the neck, but overall, I'm not unhappy with it. Most of the time I'm sitting anyway. If I want to watch video or if I want to play around with the streaming music, I'll just take an extra minute and set it up before I go. So not a huge deal as far as that goes. Now, as far as a couple of things that I don't like, there's a couple of little things with the car itself that I think are a little bit annoying. And the first one is the trunk. Now, the thing I've noticed about the trunk is when I go to close the trunk sometimes, it doesn't close. It's like a really weird fit, so I have to like slam it almost to get it to close. Sometimes I think it's closed, and I'll get in, and I'll buckle my seatbelt, and the seat will adjust, because remember, the seat automatically adjusts to my driver position. And then I'll notice that the indicator tells me that the trunk is still open, so I have to unbuckle, the seat readjusts back out, and I go and I close the trunk again. It's trivial, I know that, but it's annoying. It's one of those little nuisance things that kind of gets to you a little bit, because it happens fairly frequently. I don't close the trunk well enough, unless I absolutely slam it. Out here, and I've opened the trunk, and I open it, and then I just push it shut. Sounds like it shuts, right? But it's not. I can tell you right now, it's not shut. It's still not shut. I can still see it's open. That time it clicked. I could hear it click. So it's kind of a funny thing. That's one thing that kind of annoys me. The other thing is I noticed something on the hood of the car, on the front lid, that kind of bothered me a little bit. And it looks like, as far as I can tell, this looks like some sort of a paint defect. There's an actual spot where the paint is missing right there, it's the clear finish, it's the paint, it's all the way down to the metal. You can see it when you look at it. And I can't see how else that would have happened. I always park in a garage. I always park away from everything. I don't park under trees. I'm meticulous about going ahead and cleaning off any bird poop or anything else on the car. I don't see how that happened. So I'm thinking maybe it was some sort of a paint issue. I'm going to monitor it and see if any other spots appear and see what else happens, and I'll think about how to get it fixed or whatever. But it's kind of annoying. You know, you spend a lot on a car. This is the nicest car I've ever owned. I've taken better care of it than I've taken any other car. But, you know, I look at it and I go, wow, that's kind of funny that that kind of thing happens. I mean, I put almost 7,000 miles on this car in the 6 months, and it's been terrific. But one little thing like that just makes you go, really? Really? You know, because it's so trivial and so silly. It's a little tiny spot, but it's something that I noticed right away. And I was like, are you kidding me? Nothing that I did. You know, if I did it, I'd be like, okay, I did it. You know, stuff happens. But this isn't anything I did. And I'm like, oh man, it's just annoying. So anyway, I'll keep an eye on it and let you know what comes of it. But those kinds of things happen, and they happen to every car. And I know in Teslas in particular, there's been some issues with some of the workmanship has been in places not as great. I hadn't noticed anything until just yesterday was the first time I noticed that. And I tried, you know, making sure that I, you know, washed it off, cleaned it, buffed it out a little bit, you know, with the rags and whatever, just to see if maybe it was something that was stuck on there. But no, it's actually, you can see it actually goes down to the paint. So kind of a weird thing. Overall, I would say I love the car. I still love it. Yeah, my wife is not as keen on it. You know, it's smaller than the minivan, and I get that. And you know, she wasn't really ready for the movement to electric, and you know, the price point on it kind of daunted her a little bit. Though, as I've said, the price point actually is worthwhile considering what cars cost today. Not a huge deal. You know, it's just one of those things that I have to kind of temper a little bit when I talk about my enthusiasm for the car. I have to kind of take a step back and think about how that feels. But overall, I'm very happy with it. I'm content with what's going on. I haven't had any range anxiety. Nothing's felt really bad to me. I had this one day I was driving a lot. I had to go back and forth to Fort Lauderdale a couple of times over the course of like 2 days. And I did not charge in between. But I had no issues. I was able to get back and forth pretty easily, pretty quickly. It was a convenient process to charge when I got home. Didn't really have any thoughts about not having enough charge at one point. As I was driving back, I got down to the 40 miles, which is about 20% of my charge. And I went, yeah, okay, I'm at 20%, great. I got 40 miles, no problem. And I pulled in the garage and I charged it up. Actually, that's not even true. I pulled in the garage and I did not charge it up. I went the next morning, took my son to school, and then charged it up after I got home. So I really had no range anxiety whatsoever. This has not been an issue for me in this car. Between home charging and work charging and the periodic, you know, stop at a charging place to just put a little bit of charge in it, really not a big deal at all. So it's been pretty amazing that way. So I've put about 6,900 miles on the car, on the odometer since I took possession of it, and I put about 1,661 kilowatt hours out of the battery. I've taken that much energy out of the battery. Now that means that I'm using 240 watt hours per mile, which is really pretty good. I told you I was going to create an app about the car, and I've done that for the most part. I keep track of every month what the battery looks like. I actually, every time I do a charge, I collect data about the car. So I can see that my starting battery life was 215 miles on a full charge. Each month it's gone down a little bit. So July it was 212, then August it was 200, and that was the time when they put in a software update, and then so on. And I'm at about 206 miles now. If I look at the overall, it's still in that 200 mile range, so I think I'm still good. But versus the delivery, it's a little bit off. It's gone down a little bit over time, which I guess is okay. I also look at the watt hours per mile. And as you saw on the other chart, I'm at about 242 overall. And that's about 219 per month, though I had a couple of months when I first got the car that I didn't know how to drive it, that it was a little bit higher. When I look at the actual watt hours based on driven miles as opposed to miles added, I can see that I'm at about 312, 313, something like that. And that's because when I'm driving the car, the actual mileage I get kind of changes a little bit off of the watt hours that are produced. So just sort of something to consider, it's a little bit different. And I also created another chart to kind of look at that a little more. What is my mileage versus the actual miles that I've added? And it's at about 65%, which is about what I'd expect. So there's some amount of loss based on how the car works and the fact that the battery drains a little bit as you drive along. Sometimes it's for other things. You stop for a while and the battery gets used. So just something to keep in mind. So I expect that. As far as actual charging, I've been keeping track of how many charges I've had, what it's cost me per month, and the maximum month I've had was the $27 month in December, where I charged a bunch of times before I went back and forth. But I can see I've been charging at about $1.60 per charge or something, somewhere around there. And that would mean that overall, my total money that I'd have used in electricity is about $127. That includes a 5% energy loss, because when you plug in, there's some amount of energy that gets lost across the connector in going to the battery. But that's about $127 that I've spent. That's pretty impressive in 6 months. So that's about 0.01 cents per mile, almost 2 cents per mile. If I do the MPG equivalent, it's just an equivalent, it's about 100.6 MPGE would be about what I'm getting out of it.